need support staff to clear the room. Stand up and walk, now.
Hello, and welcome to a very special episode of The Watch. My name is Chris Ryan. I am an editor at TheRinger.com. I'm joined as always by Andy Greenwald in this house of mirrors, or hall of mirrors.
Hall of mirrors.
Hall of mirrors.
You don't know your
We are joined by Sam Esmail.
Guys, this is history in the making right here.
This is really big, I
This
feel
is
like. Thank you.
groundbreaking.
Thank you for joining us. You joined us
Thank
twice
you for
in 1
having
week,
me.
first of all.
I know,
Thank
this
you.
is the most
mean-
we've ever had a guest on in 1 week.
I'm glad to be that record breaker.
Thank you for making the time for us. Congratulations, the end of a
Thank
season
you.
of Mr. Robot last night.
It was last night, yeah.
We are going to talk about the episode in depth. You said you just wanted to recap it. You just
Well, I
wanted to-
mean, yeah,
You just
no,
want to
I
have
want
a regular episode of The
I want
Watch.
just a watch episode. And then let's talk about Atlanta and how brilliant
Yeah,
that
we're going to
show-
do that.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about. Let's do a little rundown. We're going to talk about last night's
Right.
finale.
Is this technically a re-up or is this
This is a re-up, but it's like when you're on,
Are
it's
you
like
okay
a
with that?
I
special
wanted
edition.
to be the. Oh yeah, okay.
It's a special
All right,
episode of
special
The Watch.
You get a very special episode.
There
We're
you
going to
go.
learn about
I feel so much better.
what happened in the garage. It's going to be okay. We're going to work through it. Last night's episode, we're going to talk about the season overall. We're going to
Okay.
talk about things we've said about the season overall, which
This is
you've heard.
important. Yeah,
and you're
which
here-
I have heard.
You're here in the room for.
Yes.
And then we're going to have a regular episode of The Watch, which I guess means we'll go
just roll
crazy
right.
over Atlanta and Kanye West and talk about the casting decisions and
Yeah,
Stranger
maybe
Things.
any movies you've caught up on. Yeah.
Some movies. I don't fly anymore. Okay, we got to get right into it. Last
Okay,
night,
let's do it.
season 2 ended.
Yes.
First question is a pretty obvious one. Did you have to Google the predatory habits of pythons, or is that just something you knew?
God, that's a good opener.
Thank you. Yeah.
I think there was some Wikipedia. In
Was
that.
there?
Well, I always remembered that would be a great title for an episode, and Python's obviously a programming language. But then
No, I didn't know.
well,
that.
it's there you go.
idea.
You're learning.
This is not the tech podcast.
And so anyway, so when I thought about where is this going to fit, and because sometimes the tail wags the dog when you think about episode titles. You kind of want them to fit into a certain episode, and it wasn't really fitting. And I already had another episode title for the finale, so I was like, well, we'll do it for season 3. And the more we got into it, and the more we got into that last episode, I realized that the whole season was that. It was that whole people were lying in wait. I mean, Mr. Robot, Joanna, obviously Dom. So it all kind of made sense, and that's sort of why we went with that.
Was the original title for the finale Elliot Gets Shot.jpg?
You know what? I will tell it to you, and I'm a little embarrassed by it.
Okay.
Because it's so lame in hindsight now. But it was Titles and Deeds. And I remember I pitched it. I was like,
that's
no,
good.
it's Titles. You like that?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I think
Well, that's the
you like it better.
Chris is sitting next to you right
Shit,
now. He's on.
maybe I can change it still. No one checked their DVR. Well, maybe I can.
Nobody
do-
watched the finale. of
Nobody
Mr.
watched the finale. We'll just
Robot.
redo it. No, I think we can probably. I think it's probably out there.
Yeah.
You could save it for
Too
next
bad.
season.
Save it for next season.
Did you have is that an actual FBI tactic, the Python approach? Oh.
Yeah. Well, the man in the middle was an actual tactic.
Okay.
Because the idea is that they don't want, if that person has sensitive information that they need, and so that therefore they don't want that person knowing that they're on to them.
Yeah.
They'll want to sort of really kind of stay back and surveil all the people until they can get to him without him knowing that they're going.
Yeah, because all that stuff with the we waited. I mean, that's a lot of that is like in the looming tower, and it's a lot of the investigations about 9/11 leading up to it, where they were allowing these things to sort of play themselves out.
Well, I mean, the Bin Laden search was a lot like that. I mean, where they could have captured all these lieutenants but they didn't. Kind of hoping that it would lead back to him.
So, did the revelation last night that there was, like, all FBI agents have a good whiteboard?
Right.
The revelation that all these people were on the board all along. Does that put Dom's role this season in a different light? Because just the other week when we did the Hacking Robot, I was talking to Grace. That one of the questions was, why has no one listened to her? She seems to know who did this, and no one is listening. Was that a misdirect? Because clearly. Was that a misdirect? Meaning she wanted to jump the gun, or we just didn't have the full picture?
No, she didn't want to jump the gun. In fact, there's language in there in the I think 8th or 9th episode where Santiago, after they get hacked and the video gets released, they're like, this slow approach isn't working anymore. We're gonna have to go guns blazing.
Right.
And then that's when they sort of shift gears.
But I guess it does shed some of her behavior in a different light.
Right.
So if you know that she is basically on a knife's edge, waiting for these these people to make the mistake that they can pounce on. It explains some of the insomnia. It explains some of the inability to ever really truly
Because the
be
bad
in her
things
life.
are still out there.
Yeah, right.
And it's a
Right.
24/7.
Because she knows what's coming.
It's
to
a
some
24.
extent.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a devotion on the show to, there's a commitment to your ideas that I find very admirable. But I feel like sometimes you might be writing yourself into more and more difficult corners, right? Because last season you did the hack, and Tyrell immediately became the most wanted human being in the world, which made his presence in this season very difficult.
Right.
Something you addressed by not really having him
Right.
present on the season. Similarly, in the beginning of season 1, when Elliot does the stuff to Lenny, there is a consequence to it.
Right.
And he's in prison, as we found out this
Right.
season. Going into the next season, you already have more of these set up now, because how does Darlene get away? She is in custody. It
Right.
seems very unlikely that she's going to have her freedom back again.
Right.
Elliot has a bullet inside of him.
Right.
That's problematic.
That's pretty problematic.
Do you?
We're gonna have to address that.
Yeah, I feel like it's gonna come up.
I think, or we could yada yada yada.
Yeah.
over
Could you?
it. I mean, it's Mr. Robot. We kind of do whatever the hell we want.
That sums
no,
it up.
no. I mean, honestly, you know, the thing that I love about what we did in this season is we do address it, but we find interesting ways to address it. Like the hack and the 3 days that kind of Elliot doesn't remember that ended the first season. I mean, we kind of, again, I always look at the season, or I always look at the show as like we're pulling back from a picture, and we're all, you know, and as we pull back, every step we take, we're seeing more and more of it, and the more we see, the more things change of what our understanding is, and that's sort of how I wanted to tell this story. So you know, look, we could have done a more straightforward narrative, right, where it's stage 2, and let's say, and I would never do this because I think this would be terrible, but if Elliot in the first episode of this season was like, yeah, I'm seeing a guy and he's, I guess, my other personality, but I got to do this stage 2 hack, and let's ignore that and let's just go plot, 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 and then end on whatever stage 2 is going to end up being. But that to me was never an interesting way, an interesting storytelling approach, as I guess I would say.
I guess the question there would be then, so if you've got this picture and you're showing different quadrants of the picture and
Right.
zooming out and zooming in at different times, do you always know the whole picture?
Yes.
So did you have the Tyrell Elliot conversation written last year or like written last season, and you knew you were eventually going to shoot it like that for this season?
Yes.
Okay.
You're talking about the way it
Yeah.
ended with Terrell and Elliot. Pretty much the big markers for the whole series, I think we've got pretty figured out.
Okay.
It's the details will change, and obviously sort of some of the character subplots, you know, will develop and change and go in different directions.
But in terms of having a dock on your computer with Alf in it, that's been there for like 5-6
See,
years.
no, so that's something I could never have done alone. That's something that the crazy people in my writer's room and I would have to like figure out together. And that's the stuff that kind of billows up in the room. You know, one of the things that I will say is that because we have this reality or surreality to the show, that it gives us a lot of creative freedom, if you will, to go in all these like wacky adventures. So I personally do not believe in like, you know, we have the markers, we know the answers.
Yeah.
So we're not like, it's not like we're like just billowing up mystery just for
Right.
the sake of billowing up mystery. But in between those markers, we get to have a lot of fun.
But that's a very different. It feels like it's a fine line, because you know you're directing every episode of the
Yeah.
show now. You're running the show. You're
Right.
writing or rewriting or co-writing much of the show. It's coming from work you had previously done as a feature screenplay. To have that level of control, which is a bigger issue in general, because
Big
apparently
theme
control
this
is
season.
apparently it's an
The
illusion.
theme, yeah.
But sometimes you can use that. No, never mind.
Sometimes you can use your illusion too. Sometimes, but.
Which is a good we should discuss that too.
Let's just add it to the list, Chris.
Yeah.
We're going to be here for a while. You have this level of control, but you also have to have the lighter touch to allow things like, in this case, Alf,
Right.
to bubble up onto the show and have a place there. And that's my favorite thing about the show, is that you never know which direction it's going to go. And I really, really, it makes me very happy when Alf appears on an Emmy Award-winning show that is not Alf.
I do remember us shooting that scene that day, and it was, honest to God, I think it was maybe 2 days after we got the nomination, and I was kind of looking over, because my other EPs were there, and I was like, hey, you know, we just got nominated for
Am I pissing all
outstanding
over
drama.
this? Yeah,
You know what I
exactly.
mean? And I've got Paul Fusco on the floor of a red, you know, Corvette, like, you know, and then we kind of all, at the same time, we're like, this is amazing. This is awesome. Yeah.
This is what you should be using
exactly.
the platform for.
You know, you talk a little bit about this idea that if you wanted to, you could have done a straightforward version of the show. And I think even in the earlier parts of the first season, there is this, you can see the framework for what the traditional USA Network version of this would have been, with a hack of the week, where there's like a villain that Elliot brings down while there's like an overarching narrative. But it was funny to hear to hear Burn Notice get brought up last night.
Right.
that
was that funny?
It was funny, and I was wondering like whether or not, when you're writing the second season, when you're going through this process, how much of it is a reaction to it still being a television show? Because I think a lot of the questions people brought up this season were about the pacing, were about the length of the episodes, were about how long a scene would go on versus traditionally how long that scene would go on if it was a Burn Notice scene.
Right.
So like when you're making this, how aware are you of like TV conventions?
Well, so this is you know, I'm the honest answer to that is I'm not aware.
Okay.
Because I've never done this. I've never been in a TV writer's room. And then I get told, you know, like the opening to episode, I'm going to call episode 3, which is in that one episode, we open with a scene between Darlene and Elliot. It's a flashback in their apartment, and it's, I think, about 12 minutes long. And it's the two of them smoking weed, watching a movie, and catching up. That is ridiculous. That's ridiculous in a feature. That's definitely ridiculous in a television show. And there's no sense of drama necessarily. Obviously, there are things that get revealed, but they're not going toe to toe or anything like that. It's honestly just sort of a kind of these two reuniting, and we watched the scene. And you know, it was actually longer. I think it was like 60 minutes long. We trimmed it down, got it to a certain point. We watched the scene. We were like, we really like it. Yeah, and honestly, at the end of the day, it's like, well, but you can't have a 12-minute and then the title card.
Yeah.
What the hell? You can't do that. But we really like it. I don't know. Like, Carly's amazing. Rami's amazing. There's something interesting about what's happening in the scene. There's something underneath that's going on that you don't quite know. There's a lot of subtext to that scene. And so what we did was, and that episode in particular was pretty long. It was about 64 minutes, 63 minutes. So I was like, look, and I'm actually a guy, believe it or not, that does not love long episodes, purely because Well, here's what I'll say. Purely because I don't like falling asleep halfway through and being like, fuck, now I gotta watch it the next day.
That would be amazing if like all through this season you had been like, are you fucking kidding me, Night of? 58 minutes, bro?
Let me say this. One of my favorite TV shows this year was the OJ doc.
Yeah.
Did you guys watch this?
Yeah.
Oh, the doc, not the FX series,
doc,
yes, Made in America.
Made in America. Do you know how long those episodes were?
Yeah.
They're like 90 minutes each.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't care that they're 90 minutes. The only reason why I cared was I basically fell asleep every night at the 45-minute mark.
But you know you're saying like...
You do that annoying thing where you have to rewind. Like, I don't remember this part because it went 10 minutes after, you have to rewind and figure out. That's honestly the only reason why. But otherwise, it was great. I mean, this weird thing, I remember I read a review of the night of the season finale, which is also 90 minutes long, where they were like, why didn't they just split it up into 2? And for the life of me, why don't you just pause it at 45 minutes and go back to it the week later if you want to do that? Like, I don't get this need to break up running
I think
time.
there's this assumption now that we've given so much control over the entertainment experience that the one thing that we still feel some sort of fidelity to is how it was presented to us.
Right.
That it has to be,
Absolutely.
This is how it was meant to be. We read the instructions on the back. It said rinse, repeat, question mark, so we did it.
Sure.
But I think what Chris is getting at is an interesting point, because I think there are people who make TV and follow TV conventions, and TV conventions are powerful and conventions for a reason and often popular. There are people who make TV and aggressively flout those conventions, having often worked in the convention minds. Like someone like Matt Weiner, who was on staff at Becker and then made Mad Men, made a very different kind of show. Right. I think it's worth noting that I don't think you are even paying attention to the convention. No. You're kind of just making it up.
Right. I'm kind of just going with what feels right. And by the way, that's not to say that I'm the end-all be-all, because to just finish that story. So then I showed that episode. I was like, it's long. And we had just done a 62-minute episode the previous week. So I said, let me just show it to people.
Okay.
They're going to tell me that first scene, you cut it down to 6
Yeah.
minutes. It's not resonating. Because I can admit when I'm like, maybe I'm too in love with something, and and I got to cut my losses or whatever. Everybody at the network loved it. I show it to all the editors. I show it to all the assistant editors. I was literally begging people to tell me, what don't you like about this? And then everybody was just like, no, this is good, solid, go. And then I was like, okay, great. And then we release it. And then everybody else told me that they hated it. And that's kind of how, all jokes aside, like that's sort of what happens. And I don't know if we're in a bubble or whatever, but then other people would then chime in and say, but then even that, then because I read all the reviews and I read all the criticism. You, for example, I maybe I'm jumbling episodes, but you, for example, didn't love the throwing up, right? Is that right? In that episode, you didn't love that whole sequence and
with it picking the pills out of the vomit.
And you thought that went on too long or whatever. Maybe I'm not right about that.
It's fair to assume I don't love people picking pills out of vomit.
But you loved the Porsha, or I'll say Angela Philip Price scene at the restaurant.
Loved it.
Sepinwall, you read Sepinwall's review, the exact opposte.
That's good for our brands, though, to go in different directions.
That's what I'm saying. So then it's like you get these differing. We're
being honest now.
We're making very good podcasts.
We're making excellent podcasts. But it's true that it's purely subjective. But I do want to go back to some specifics of the finale. But since we're already talking about it, in terms of the running time, the thing that was interesting to me about it is that the beginning of the season there were the longer episodes, and then you tweeted at one point, basically like a half apology for that. The second half of the season, the episodes were more traditional running length.
Right.
Was any of that by design, or was that a part of this pretty unprecedented block shooting, editing?
You're directing every episode, yes.
System that you had set up.
No, it had nothing to do with that. It really had to do with, in those episodes, what I would have cut for time would have sacrificed too much in the table setting, in the early episodes.
Right.
Whereas when we start getting into the season, scenes that I loved but didn't really need, were more apparent, and I could cut that and put it in the deleted scenes on the DVD. Right. So it was like, in the beginning, it was just tough because I couldn't really maneuver that much, because if I cut certain scenes, then
it affects everything else.
It affects everything else, yeah.
Couple more points on the finale before we move on to the stuff that we're already clearly talking about. Because we have to be servicey. We have to talk about the finale.
We do.
I was happy. I don't know if Chris was happy. Look at his face.
He does not look happy.
I was happy.
This is not a happy guy.
I'm having the time of my life.
But you know what I like more? I like Scott Knowles. I like Brian Stokes Mitchell. He's an amazing actor.
He's amazing.
And I really appreciated that twist. And that, it's interesting. That won't even be called a twist, because it wasn't like some meta reality warping reveal that a sad drunk guy was messing with someone.
Right.
That he was sending the messages to Joanna. But one of the reasons why I really like that is because, for as much as you are doing these things on the show that you're tearing down global financial systems and questioning reality, someone was killed in season 1, and that death resonated. I appreciated that wasn't just like a yada yada, Tyrell's a villain, we don't really care.
Right.
That had a really agonizing effect on someone, and it was interesting that you chose this moment, a finale, there's a lot of attention on a finale, to remind us of that fact.
Right. One of the big things about this season were, we wanted to really deal with the consequences of what these people did in the first season. And, because he wasn't in this season that long doesn't mean that we still can't deal with the consequences of what Tyrell did.
Yeah, one thing you could definitely say about the second season is that in some ways it is a PTSD season, right? Like everybody in it is dealing with all the trauma that they went through the first season, for sure.
Right.
Couple more points. Elliot shot.
Yes.
That happened.
That did happen.
That's real.
That is very real.
Okay. The phase 2, the explosion of a major skyscraper.
Just small correction, and don't ask me why, but it's actually stage 2.
Stage 2, I'm sorry. Phase 2 is coming in season 4 because it's very linear thinking. Stage 2, as far as we know, did not happen yet. We don't know.
Did not happen yet.
Or you can confirm that it did not happen.
I can confirm it did not
happen. So that brownout, that's just a brownout at the last
that's
shot.
The thing that that's the thing we've been building up to. Yeah.
Okay. Those are happening.
Those flickering,
Can you say how much time elapsed between Elliot getting shot, Mr. Robot flickering out, and Angela getting the phone call?
This is my big question.
That I cannot answer.
Okay, but that's an important question to know.
It is an important question.
So we don't. So it's possible to. I don't want to say assume. It's possible to wonder if Angela, the last time we saw Angela when she had this remarkable experience playing Zork in a dark room with a child, to the steely person who is talking to Tyrell on the phone, that's not like tomorrow. That wasn't it wasn't necessarily just the next day.
Right.
But we can assume that Elliot is waking up.
Correct. He is not dead.
You're not threatening the death of your Emmy-winning.
No, absolutely not.
I think that's a safe assumption.
Yes.
Finally, the post-credit scene.
Yes. One of my favorite scenes.
Where was that film? Can you tell us where it was, or is it tied to a place? Is that a real store?
Well, I'll just say that, Mobley talks about it a lot. His buddy in Arizona.
Oh,
Oh,
his buddy.
See, I thought, okay. I thought it was California, but.
I did too.
No, the California one, Fry's, always has those themes.
Oh, yeah.
The California one, you mean the one in Burbank?
Yeah.
I saw a lot of reviews talk about
said
that.
Burbank, yeah.
The Burbank one is actually a UFO. So it is not the same.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. The emergence of Mobley and Trenton as semi-major characters, important characters, was a surprise, not an unwelcome one, because I like those actors, I like those characters and what they bring to the show.
Great.
This suggests an important role for them going forward. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
And Leon's back. We're thrilled with that.
I'm not going to get rid of Joey Badass.
Can't do that.
You can't.
I mean, I've wanted him since the first season, so
Right,
now that I have him,
You're not going to let him go?
I'm not letting him go.
Is he fine with that? How does he feel about his new experience as
He
an
loves
actor?
it. I mean, I didn't know this until I met him, but apparently he wanted to be an actor. That's the first thing he wanted to do.
Oh,
Oh, that's really cool.
And he kind of did this whole, rapping
This rapping thing.
Yeah. But he's great. I mean, he's great at it.
How would you describe the nature of his approach? Does he come in friendship or not friendship?
Well, I can't answer that. That I can't.
But I can ask
Well,
you.
so we've
Sure.
there's some theories. I mean, I know he can't say anything about this, but because of what he asks, which is, do you have the time?
It's a very White Rosy
It's a
kind of
very
thing.
White Rosian kind of thing. Yeah.
Sam agrees. He's forgetting this is mostly an audio medium, but for those listening
Silence
to
is
this
deafening.
as a podcast. Okay, so that's last night's finale.
Right.
In other like just house cleaning stuff, are you back? You're not back in a room yet for season
No.
3.
That'll happen in about 2 weeks.
So you've already shot something for season 3. Is that what I heard?
Who are you talking to?
I think Rami said that in an interview, not with me.
That's funny. I should. Did
I just get Rami
I am
in
not
trouble?
commenting on this.
Okay, you don't have to
But
comment.
yes, you did get.
Can
Rami in trouble.
I have a question though about, so you've got this Emmy-winning star.
Yeah. Who's brilliant.
There's there's like a full episode that he is absent from
Yes.
for the most part, and then there is one that he's like 80% absent from.
Right.
Correct? And you're talking about making Mobley and Trenton into bigger characters possibly, and television shows disperse as they go on.
Correct.
How hard is it to not go ISO Rami, like you get the ball all the time?
These are basketball terms, by the way. Chris is trying to bait you.
Apparently I don't know anything about this. What is this?
He walked into it, by the way. We weren't going to mention it again.
No, but like, how hard is it to not play with your most expensive toy?
Your
kind of?
point guard.
Yeah, right.
Let me just say this. When I started writing this as a feature, it was Elliot all day long, every scene, basically. That was the story. And then when I started writing that first act and went to 90 pages and I wasn't even a quarter of the way through the first act, the reason why that happened was because I started being more interested in the other characters.
Okay.
And that was what happened, was like, well, wait a minute. I want to go in this Darlene direction. I think Angela could be really fascinating, and Terrell. And that's when I realized, it can't be 2 hours, because as much as I love my Elliot character, I love all these other worlds and all these other possibilities, and the way that's going to affect and empower and also detract from Elliot.
Yeah.
Like, I love the way and that's why I think that's sort of the beauty of TV, is that
Absolutely.
that's really the only.
But
time
you're
you can do
just in such a specific situation because so much of what you're doing is through his point of view.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it must be like you. So what I wanted to ask you about a lot of had to do with the visual guidebook or Bible that you guys have established on the
Right.
show, and the perspective, and how it changes if you're going to shoot the same way but with Dom as sort of the POV character.
Right.
Did you, when you were shooting those things, did you make subtle adjustments to the
subtle.
Okay.
Subtle. The one thing is you always want cohesion when you can't, and it would be corny in my opinion. It would be corny if like Dom gets like different beautiful lighting and a whole different look, saturated look, and then you have a different look for another storyline. But you do these subtle little hints and subtle different little compositions. But keeping in the same tone. We always wanted to keep the tone cohesive, whether we're in Dom's storyline or Elliot's storyline. But we would always sort of give a different, and also with music, also with sound, we would give different kind of cues to the different storylines.
Yeah.
One of the things that makes this unique for all of us is that Chris and I have been talking about the season the whole way through. We know, as you've said, you've listened to us the whole way through.
Yes.
And so now we have an opportunity to have all our words come back in our face, but also give you a chance to respond to them. So one of the ones, and you can cherry pick if there are things that were particularly upsetting you.
Well, let me just say up front, I mean this, and I really do mean this, because I'm not upset that people are critical of the show. Does it hurt my feelings that night when I'm listening or reading it? Sure. I mean, I would be inhuman if I were to say, I don't care. Obviously, I'm a person. I'm feeling. I want people to like it. If they don't, that sucks. But at the same time, if they're intelligent people with insight and all of that, like, I'd love to hear why, and then because this is what's that Sorkin quote about, like, you surround yourself with smart people.
The internet is garbage.
That's his best quote. What's a podcast? Another classic Sorkinism.
Did he say?
Just imagine if you asked him, he would.
No, but it's the idea of surrounding yourself with smart people who disagree with you.
Right.
It's the team of rivals thing. You always love to bring it.
I do always love to bring it up.
I don't know why. You're a little obsessed with that, but anyway, I love that. I love getting. I always want to be better, and so it's good to hear the other side.
Well, I think it's an incredibly healthy attitude that I think, like, I don't know if I was in the same circumstance I'd be able to do it. But I also think one of the reasons why we're glad to have you especially is because you are a very good advocate for your choices and for your ideas. And even hearing you talk about them have convinced me or turned me around on a couple of them. So one thing I wanted to talk about was my feeling about the shape of the season, particularly like the prison stuff and the reveal. At the time, my feeling was that it was going on for too long.
Right.
My feeling with it in the rearview mirror is that it was good to have that for the show and for the health of the show going forward, because in a way it allowed you to do these sort of like stress tests, not to use a financial metaphor, but I just did, on the other characters and actors you had in the repertory.
Right.
Because all of a sudden you could see, or maybe you could just show to us, that Porsha Doubleday can hold her own on this show, that character is an incredible resource, that this new character of Dom is worth watching, that her show is a good show, that Angela's show, Darlene's show is a good show. That's, as Chris was saying, just in terms of how a TV show needs to build outward, that's enormously valuable. And the experience that Elliot had on his own is valuable for the character, our understanding of him. But it was tougher to watch week to week.
And so this becomes the question, because I don't want it to be tough. I mean, I know that there are some writers and directors out there that are like, well, it's tough because what he's going through is tough, and I want you to feel just as shitty as this person is feeling right now, and you have to slog through that with. I don't believe in that. I really and honestly, there are a lot of great movies that I love, but I will not watch again because they're just tough to watch.
Yeah.
I don't personally. My sort of taste in entertainment is I want it to be entertaining. I want it to say something. I want it to be about something. I want it to be challenging in the right aesthetic, artistic ways. But I definitely want it to be entertaining at the end of the day. So when we go through those first few episodes, and I'm like, well, the honest thing is Elliot is not going to. Number one thing is I don't actually love plot. I think plot is like that shit you have to have the characters say to you, exposition. Who gives a shit? Like, you kind of know they need to get to honestly, plot is an excuse for me to explore character and to explore worlds and to explore choices the characters will make. But the plot itself, it's like, okay, so the plot of like going and beating the bad guy, that's every fucking movie but it's how they do it and what choices they make along the way.
Right.
That's interesting, right? So with Elliot, I knew from the outset that it was going to be dishonest if he was going to essentially shrug this robot thing off and jump back into it. Like, he really needed to be introspective and go deep dive into himself. And really, honestly, if, putting yourself in his shoes, he's going to want to get rid of this thing. He wants to be normal. I mean, that's the thing he's been saying from the beginning of the show. So how do we dramatize that in an entertaining way, and that will feel honest? And we talked a lot to the psychology consultant, and we talked about the iterations, and that's basically, in terms of Elliot's storyline, those were the first few episodes. Now, how do we dramatize that in an entertaining way? Well, you saw we have the Adderall on, and he decides to basically overdose to get rid of him. That doesn't work. Then we have the essentially let's come to Jesus moment. Let's play a game of chess and let's just battle it out. Let's just battle the wills. When we watched that, when I pitched it, when I wrote it, when people commented, when they read, the one thing I'd say is are we too up our own ass here? Is this interesting? Are we saying something? Is he evolving? And the answer always for me had to be yes. Obviously, and again, it's always mixed, right? I mean, because I know what your reactions were, and that was on the, I'm not getting anything out of this, and I'm not getting engaged out of this. There was those that were, and then there were those that cherry picked and said, well, that was engaging, but that we could have done without. Ultimately, I can't do anything. I can't convince you to like something or be engaged in something that you are not.
Right.
But all I can say is the choices were based on the fact that we found it engaging, we found it entertaining.
I think that we talked earlier about this bubble that people watch these shows in, and I was thinking a lot about this. And I went back and rewatched the Prison Break episode from the first episode, and I was like, it's one of the best episodes of first season.
I've
It's like one of the
never
best.
seen that show.
What?
I've never seen that.
Prison
show.
Break?
Yeah,
it's coming back, so you better catch up. From the Prison Break episode.
Oh, you're talking about my show.
Yeah.
I honestly thought you were talking about.
Oh no, the
We're
Prison
pivoting
Break
now.
episode
We're going to talk about other
of
shows.
season 1 of Mr.
Yeah, go
Robot
ahead. Yeah,
is
yeah.
one of the best episodes of television I can remember seeing.
Yeah.
It is. You're so wrapped up in it, and you can say like, the plot, and I totally understand what you mean intellectually, but you're really fucking good at it. So then when you see that happen, I think you are basically you're teaching your audience how to watch the show. And they start to come to expect a certain, whether it's intensity, and that was kind of like, I think the thing that I had the hardest thing was adjusting, like you're saying, like I will never be angry at someone who's like, this is the show I wanted to make. You know what I mean? I get pissed off when people make shows where like, I think this is the show people want me to make.
Right.
But you were like, I knew the whole time that you were like, this is the version of the show that needs to happen to grapple with the version of the show that I made in the first season. It's just that people got used to being like, you could pull my hair out in 45 minutes so that when you do get a 12-minute Darlene and Elliot.
But let me just say to that, which is, we knew in the room, and we did in this season, we knew we were going to do that. We were going to do the plot stuff. Okay, the plot stuff, we'll get to that. I mean, that's all fun. But just like when you were talking about where we needed to broaden the characters, we wanted to broaden the scope of what we could do. I mean, I'm not pivoting to Atlanta, but if you do want to talk about Atlanta, we can, because I do love Atlanta.
I thought you were going to say Prison Break. The secret text
I haven't seen
informs.
Prison Break. I do keep hearing Prison Break is good. So, but anyway, regardless, like a couple of weeks ago, you were talking about Atlanta. One of the things that you said, it actually struck me because it literally was the thing I wanted to talk about, which is the elasticity of Atlanta.
Yeah.
The fact that, man, I will turn that. I've only seen 4, but every episode is like, I have no idea what's going on. Like, I have no idea what's going to happen tonight.
And there's only, like, sadly, probably like 30 shows in the last 20 years that you can say that about.
I mean, in
Most of them
earnest.
are in the last 15 years.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But and I felt like we were a show that let's empower. I mean, that was that was literally one of the points that we brought up in the room, which is let's go for broke. Let's do that. Because we know we can do this. I mean, but we want to do more.
But I think this is the thing. This is where we are with TV now begins to bump up against what TV used to be, because TV, as groundbreaking as it is now, is still based on this relationship of expectation with an audience, where it's a very intimate experience. Like, people who fell in love with the first season have the thing that they love, and they're like, I want that again. And I want to experience that again. Whereas you're looking at it as an artist and saying, I did the Bender season, now I can do the Hangover.
Right.
And that interests you, and you're going to chase that.
But let me just say this: I don't think it's good to do it again. I don't think I don't think this season. It may have been more liked. It may have been more liked, and then whatever. I can't know in hindsight. But I know for me as a viewer too, because I'm looking at this as what do I want to see when I go home? Like, if I were to see season 1, like what you guys pitched, let's just do he's now hacking F Corp for season 2.
Yeah,
and
right.
There's a new Shayla, and these are all terrible ideas.
That's right.
Terrible ideas.
I wanted you to specifically rebut what we turned into last week, because we caught ourselves on this podcast being like, wait, we are the cliched network executives.
Exactly.
We're saying make the protagonist more likable, give him a girlfriend.
What if he's less of a robot?
Yeah, what happened? What is it about your show that turned us into these people that we rail against?
That I don't know. And what's interesting is I think in a weird way, I was actually talking to Noah Hawley about this because he watches the show, and he was telling me how, like, in the first season, you kind of touched a little bit on the rabbit.
Noah Hawley does Fargo, and
yes, brilliant. Both seasons, brilliant. Anyway, he was like, you kind of touched on the rabbit hole. You wouldn't dip your toe into the rabbit hole in the first season, but it was, mostly you kind of understood where it was going. And then in the second season, you were just like, no, we're going deep down into the rabbit hole. And honestly, the plot then just became the little side things that were, we'll get to that. I just thought that was more challenging, that was more interesting. And I think clearly we're taking risks. And obviously what can happen when you take a risk is you get a divisive reaction. And one of the things was like, are we going to squander this opportunity? I've never made a television show before. I got a chance to make a television show. Am I going to squander the opportunity to just please people and make sure that they get exactly what they're expecting?
Well, so one of the things that was interesting about this season, though, is I actually did identify with and invest in the very real stakes of the first season in terms of we're coming out of this sort of post-recession hangover. People are getting screwed over left and right by the government. Here's a guy who's lost family members, whose friends have lost family members because of this sort of corporate mega complex that's destroying America, and he does something about it. And there was a real relationship, I think, to real life there. And I think that the second season went so far out into not outer space, obviously, but
that's
started.
Season 3.
What's that?
That's season 3.
Outer space. Elliot hacks the moon.
God,
we're good.
That's my next pitch.
God damn it.
Call me, USA.
Look, Shayla's back. He hacks the moon. Mr. Moonbot, let's go.
Green light.
But the fact that you're talking about the rabbit hole, sometimes I think I felt like the light from the top of the rabbit hole was a little bit hard to see.
Right.
In terms of its relationship to, and maybe this isn't even you. This is the toilet we just
the world went
dropped
crazy?
into. Yeah.
Right.
But when you're shooting this, when you're watching this, and then you're also watching what's happening in the world, how much does that stuff cross your mind? Does it?
Obviously with the first season, it was born from the real world, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm watching, I'm reading, and I'm like, I need to make a Nia Wright story about this. But in the second season, because we were already into it, I'm continuing it. And look, Trump becoming the Republican nominee happened while we were, I think he was kind of winning. It was the primaries, and we were still writing. But the problem is that we couldn't let that affect us because we're now in our story. We've begun it to then start adapting and start including Trumpisms in.
Plus the story is set in 2015.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So maybe by the 5th season.
That's right. When they're on the moon,
Trump.
looking at the smoking crater of America. That'd be good.
But to answer your question, what's crazy about that? Because I know your tastes a little bit.
Yeah. Team of Rivals.
Read a couple.
Yeah.
Team of Rivals.
Just George Kearns Goodwin all day, every day.
To me, abstract, to talk about, to tell stories in the abstract, to do things like what you guys kind of herald a lot of the half-hour comedies, that what they are doing is they're going into these really weird, surreal, what we talk about with Atlanta or Louis or any of these things. There's a real freedom in there that dramas tend to not have.
Especially now, as they've become more formulaic.
Yeah. Well, because you're expected to follow a plot. You're expected to either do something every week the same, which is those procedurals, or from season to season, you're expected to have a season arc, a season goal.
Right. There's a big bad at the end of it.
There's always, and Breaking Bad, one of my favorite show ever, right? Sopranos probably up there too. Maybe they're neck and neck. Both of them kind of did that same thing where there was a big bad or a new big bad every other season and a new level. which is great. But like how, like now we're here, right? And everybody expected us to kind of follow one of those models. But like, well, no, we want to do the thing that we're seeing all these other great shows doing. We want to do the thing that like maybe we go into the abstract.
I just think we're at this point where our ambition and hopes for TV are outstripping just the way we're watching it, you know, and we're not, because I was really struck by the fact that Chris and I, when we paused last week and we were like, wait, what are we saying? Sorry to go back to that, but like, well, what are we actually saying here? What do we want from these experiences? You know, we say we want this sort of creativity and ambition, and then when we get it, you know, and I think that one of the things that's admirable about the show is that you're willing to take the risk and not land everything that you put up into the air.
Yeah.
You know, but if we talk about season 2 of Fargo, like, I love the spaceship. I love that there is a fucking spaceship.
I loved it.
Because why not? And similarly, my favorite thing, non-Alf category of Mr. Robot season 2 is the Angela interrogation scene.
But you didn't love. Now I'm curious, and honestly, because I just want to understand, because I know you're in general like a fan of that stuff. You're
of course.
So what was it? I mean, I'm just. If I can ask,
it's like
the tables have turned. Yeah.
I felt like it was too real. Like, I felt like the fact that it wasn't a dream made me angry. I felt like the fact that it worked and that she walked out of there and she was like, I've been convinced. I went through this experience that honestly, obviously in the world of Mr. Robot, in any number of things would have been the weirdest, craziest things that have ever happened to most people in their lives. But she goes through an experience that she should be like, wait, what the fuck just happened? Like, was that a version of me in that room? Like, why was there why was the door locked?
Why is the fish dead?
What is that person?
Well, that gets explained.
Yeah, all that stuff.
Well, ran out of water.
And then I feel like I didn't get.
Mr. Literal over here.
I felt like
you and your logic.
It played with dream logic in a reality, and I think that and the fact that I got stuck in Beyonce traffic on the way home before I watched it had a lot to do with it.
But that plays into, I think, some one of the things we wanted to steer the conversation back to, which is Beyonce. The way that we are,
Have you
which
thought
is
about that for season 3?
Queen Bee.
I have.
Lemonade, the majesty of that record. No, the way that we watch these shows.
I still do not understand how Lemonade did not win. I mean.
How it didn't win.
It didn't win anything, right? Like it was nominated for all these Emmys.
The 5'9" hack, how it didn't.
At the Emmys. I was like, which award ceremony are we talking about? It's like Critics' Choice.
No, it didn't. Wasn't it
the visual part of it?
Yes, I'm talking about the film. I guess is it considered a film?
It was considered a special.
Who won instead?
Special for TV.
I don't know.
That's a really good question.
Anyway,
I know some guys
ahead.
who did an Emmy show, and they probably know. But we don't have access to them right now.
I've derailed your point.
No, it was just that the way you can control many things about making the show and how you want it to look, how you want it to feel, how you want to deliver it. But the way people watch it is still not in your control. And so and so I feel like when Chris and I talked the next day, his mood affected how he watched the show that night.
Also,
and a lot of people are experiencing that.
It was also specific to Angela, because I feel like Angela was somebody who went through. To me, Angela had a 3-day blackout period too, because some of her transition to tight ponytail, like like Ice Queen, and doing what she's doing in this season was still a little murky for me, and I think that was partially why I was just like, what is this? What are we doing here? But I think I ended this season with a much greater appreciation for the whole than I did when I was going through it.
That was my question. Were you making it for a week-to-week in your mind, or are you making this 10, now 12-hour film?
Well, so let me ask you a question, because I've been asked that question, and is it better binged? Is it better week-to-week? How am I supposed to know that? Like, how am I even supposed to guess that?
Well, because you watch TV.
I do watch TV, but it's weird. What's a show that's better binged than week to week? And I could probably tell you, I could still watch that show week to week. You know what I mean? Yeah. I don't really know the difference, because
I think part of it is mood. I think part of it is like you're putting together a state of being, right? Like so much of this show is so atmospheric that it almost felt abrupt to end it and start it.
And here's probably the bigger. What I have heard is the commercial breaks, and because I don't cut it with commercial breaks. They kind of do that later. They know, you can't do that in front of Sam, because Sam gets pissed off. Like, they disrupt me while I'm watching. I don't want to watch it with the commercial. And I don't do that because I'm in it. I'm in the world, the music, the whole thing, the tone. It's very much to me like it's a complete experience.
That's why Chris does the ad reads on this podcast.
Got it.
That's right.
Which, by the way, really take me out of the mood. The tone.
But they also keep us here in this nice studio.
Right.
But please go on.
No, I'm just saying, like, I don't know how disruptive that is, but I also don't want to lean on that as an excuse. I have no, I was talking about Empire Strikes Back the other, with some of the, when I was doing some of the interviews of postmortems, and so I decided to Google it, because in hindsight, I've talked to you about this, in hindsight, I was like, we kind of did like a little bit of an Empire Strikes Back here, because there's the sister, and
and
Luke is like, is often doing his own thing, and also the ending, because I was also thinking, because I couldn't talk about at the time, but the ending of Empire Strikes. Do you remember how that movie ends? Han Solo is frozen
in carbonite.
Empire basically kicks everyone's ass, and Princess Leia is like, basically fleeing, and you get told that Darth Vader is Luke's father, and his hands
cut off. Yeah, he's in the hospital.
It is the bleakest ending with a million cliffhangers, and it's still my favorite Star Wars movie.
Yeah.
So I go on Wikipedia, I'm like just curious, because I had to make sure that was the ending. And the first couple paragraphs I'm reading, mixed reactions on Empire Strikes Back when it was first released.
Yeah.
Which I was shocked at.
But
do you even remember that?
But isn't that because you don't know where you were going yet?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think in a weird way, maybe after Return of the Jedi, you look back and you're like, oh no, that's
better than the Ewoks.
Right. I mean, it definitely was better than the Ewoks. Yeah, for sure. But I think the appreciation I had for that movie the fact that they don't have you don't have all the answers. You have questions, and it is darker and then murkier, and it is more introspective. All those things I think made me I mean, I don't ever remember disliking Empire Strikes Back, but I was kind of shocked to hear that people were mixed on it at the time.
But isn't this indicative of this weird state you find yourself in, where you finish the season of television, but that is part of a journey that you have plans for.
Yeah.
You have answers that you're not going to tell us. You have ideas, and you have plans, and you have different tones that you want to play with. But we've reached this at this point almost artificial segmentation of your story, and now you have to sit down and explain it.
Well, and it's weird too that personally as a viewer, when people are like, I need answers, and if I don't have answers, well, I don't like it. You know what I mean? To a certain extent, I understand the frustration, because if at a certain point, if you're not getting any answers and you're just like totally in the dark about everything,
right?
And then you're just too untethered to invest in anything. That I get. But obviously, I think we dole out answers. I mean, even in the finale, I remember reading all these articles. The 5 things Mr. Robot must answer in the finale. The 8 things, here are the 8 big questions.
Notes?
And I'm like, well, okay, let me. So I'll
do what I can.
I fill it out like an Us Weekly survey, do we answer? And we pretty much answered 95%. But guess what? We also asked more questions. Yeah. Those answers led to bigger questions. Well, no, I need the answers to those 2 on top of the ones that you're going to ask. And it's like, well, that's not the show. That's not a mystery. That's not, storytelling is all about what you want to know. What we want you to want to know what happens.
I can only imagine how frustrating it must be to read stuff like that. And as somebody who produces a lot of it, I apologize. But, and I think that echoes something that Lindelof used to say when he was doing towards the end of Lost about what people needed to know and what was going to be an answer. But another movie that you've brought up a couple of times in the sort of post-finale interview process has been Jackie Brown, right? Yeah. So you're talking about how Jackie Brown, you got the last act of Jackie Brown, you have no idea whose team she's on.
Right.
But you do know that she's on Jackie's team.
Right.
And that is the difference, right? That is like the main difference when you're watching Mr. Robot is you have you have to know that Slater is an extension of his personality.
Right.
So in some ways, there is a part of his brain that wants to blow up a building.
Correct.
Right. And that is, I think, when people are like, I need answers, it's almost what they're saying is, I need the motivation, or I need to know the truth about who this person is.
I need to know what he wants.
Yes.
Right. And that's a very good question, right? Because motivation's big. It's huge in storytelling. It's the thing that you can latch onto, right? And that, to me, like, one of the big things we talk about in the writer's room is, well, what if you take that motivation and make it the front and center? two different things are colliding within one person. I mean, literally, you have and there's mystery around what does he want? What is he aware of at any given moment in terms of what his other side wants? And then to play the psychology of it, because a lot of the show is about psychology. Is what does that mean that he wants to blow up a building? What does that mean that he actually got shot and asked Terrell to shoot him if something got in the way? Those things happen. That was a person that asked another person to do that. That to me is where it can get really fun. Clearly, it's
fun is a weird way of putting
well,
it.
Fun as a creator.
Yeah, of course.
Well, no, not even just as a creator. For me as a viewer, I can now sit there and be like, well, wow, that motivation it's not surface level.
Right.
There's subtext to it. Like, Jackie Brown, she wants the money, right?
Yes.
Clearly, and that's great, and that's clear, and it's a fun ride to go on. But if Elliot wants to take down society, and that means he'll commit suicide, and he's got this other side of his brain, and like it's almost suicidal, it's almost crazy, and he's partly in the dark about it. What is underneath all of that means?
It's just
Do you know what I mean?
hard
Absolutely.
to make TV out of that.
It's very difficult. It's very challenging.
Yeah.
And I could say, well, let's not do that then. Well, I mean, it's way too
breaking news on this podcast?
Oh my God.
That sounds too hard. Let's go to the movie.
Yeah, let's go. Let's do the easy route. You know what I mean? And but obviously that loses people.
Yeah.
That will lose people. That's the risk.
So this season is over now. It's unprecedented in a lot of ways what you did. You directed every episode. You did this. As you said to me and you said to others, you felt like that was the easier choice because you would have been laying awake wondering what people would have been doing to your work anyway. But you did it in this very specific, very exacting time crunch. You delivered the episodes that were, I think it was broken as 10. It aired as 12, technically. What have you learned from this season that you're pivoting into next season? And I mean that on two levels, both in terms of what did you learn from making the show the way you made it this year, and then, if anything, from the reaction, specifically to Chris's criticisms.
Well, I mean, let me address Chris's criticisms.
I love this podcast.
I mean, it's amazing. Because, I mean, even just going back to what we just talked about with the motivation, that to me is something like I want to calibrate. I want to understand, because obviously I respect you.
Thank you.
I respect you, Chris.
Not me.
No, I mean, that goes without saying.
I'm an after-show host.
But I mean, if you look at it, like, there's one thing that you kept saying that I'm very tempted in season 3 to just, okay, we'll do that. And the one thing
you could call my team.
we'll give you points. No, the one thing you kept saying is, I forget the word. True north. What's my true north?
Yeah.
Where are we going? Where's my eye supposed to focus on? I'm not doing an impression of you. That's
pretty accurate.
Pretty good.
And so I remember we made the choice deliberately not to do that. We were like, isn't it cool to decrypt that, to kind of from episode to episode, sort of decrypt, oh, this was the goal, and stage 2 was the thing at the end. And because there was something very hackneyed, to be honest with you, about announcing that in the beginning and then sort of following. I just felt like I've seen that a million times.
Right.
I feel like that just seemed like a weird trope. So in thinking about season 3, I thought about that. I thought about, well, should we do that? Because I know where we're gonna, and like I said, I know where the markers are. So do we announce that in the beginning so people have something to latch onto? But then I watch these other amazing shows and I'm like, I can't. And I'll bring up Atlanta.
Sure.
I guess he's trying to give Paperboy a rap career. Like,
Trying
is
to
he trying
advise
to
him, manage him?
I have watched 4 episodes of that show, and I've seen maybe 2 minutes of that storyline being serviced.
I think they're just slow. I think they're just slow pitching.
You're just playing. You're playing with a different chemistry set though, because he's also not trying to destroy Paperboy's career. Whereas just like if you were making it, he might actually, there might be like the two sides of it. And I think that's what I say true north. It's not like I'm like, lay it out for me. I'm just like, see now actually, because the more we talk about it, the more I've thought about it, the more I feel like, so when I watched last night, I was like, man, stage 2 is pretty vengeful and brutal. It's like pretty, actually just very,
It's
like
it's terrorism. We recognize as terrorism.
And by the way, in light of what happened in the last weekend, I was like, wow, this is crazy. Like,
yeah.
And you know, I think I read some reviews where they were like, oh, it's just blowing up. No, people are in there.
Yeah,
you know?
and
it's a bombing.
That's why when you see the blackout at the end of the episode, I was like, oh, Jesus Christ. But the more I think about it, the more I've thought about it since then, I was like, it kind of works that if you are dealing with someone who is unhinged, who does have multiple personalities, who for part of this season we've been wondering whether or not Wellick was a function of like a projection of his personality, that this irrational cruelty and these inexplicable acts, that he might not have a true north. And if you're doing a show from a perspective of somebody like that, it's not going to feel like he obviously just wants to erase all debt. That's the whole point of the show, is that we want to get back to a point where we aren't all owned by companies.
Right. Well, I just think it also gets complicated, right? Life gets in the way, and for Elliot, obviously, it gets very complicated because he's obviously dealing with these issues, internal and external, like the things that he's set in motion or the things his other half has set in motion. But I think also about, again, because I want to harp on Atlanta because I do love that show. But sometimes it's about taking your girlfriend out and just trying to afford fish at market price.
But
he got the fish that was
market price. Yeah. But because season 1 of Mr. Robot ended with this global hack, Elliot can't take Shayla out for market price fish anymore. Also because she's dead in the trunk of a car.
That is true.
Yeah.
So you can't.
I want my cake and eat it too.
That's what I mean. You want to find those pockets. You want to have room for the things,
Yes.
and maybe those idiosyncratic moments end up being a fish
As
slowly
soon as
dying.
Bar and Grills start taking eCoin, we'll be good.
That's a really good point.
You guys
They
caught
could
on
just-
to that pretty quickly. The eCoin.
The eCoin thing?
Yeah, the currency.
What else did people did? Okay, people.
There's one thing that people have not caught on to, which I mean, it's one of those things where I'm telegraphing it, you know,
Like,
and they're all going to tell me
it's his dad. Like that one.
Yeah, that kind of thing. But yeah, no one's caught on to it.
You don't want to break news
No,
here.
no.
You want to give us that one?
Well,
This
there's no
is
fun in
actually
that.
Back to the Future 4.
God.
I want to ask you about that one because that's really exploded. That's our friend Sarah.
Zemeckis, I'm available for Back to the Future.
Can you confirm or deny at this moment that whether our friend Sarah Lewin's theory that Elliot is Terrell's son grown up and there's time warping going on?
Just for the sake of Sarah,
Yeah.
I'm neither confirming or denying it.
That's
She
awesome.
will be thrilled by that. But the music choices in that episode were just because you love the movies?
I do love those movies. I mean, Back to the Future 2 specifically.
That's a really interesting choice. Oh, can I ask you to?
Yeah.
Because when we talked about this last week, Chris claimed that he had never heard of this. When you were,
I can't believe you've never seen it.
It's just one of those.
I know we're all the same
there's
age.
like the surfboard.
Did you have the hoverboard rumor in your school too? That they were real?
I don't remember that, Andy. I gotta be honest
It's
with
like
you.
one of the formative
Philly thing.
experiences of my
private school
life.
stuff.
Look,
This is a Berenstain thing. Maybe, you know.
Yeah, I remember them that way too. I guess only other thing that I wanted to make sure we got to was
Did we
just-
get it? We got to. We did a lot.
covered a lot.
I feel like
we did a
I'm-
lot of
yeah.
legwork.
We're almost done. I promise.
No,
I promise
please,
everyone out there.
no. Yeah, I'm having fun.
The thing that my biggest takeaway though, and I mentioned it briefly, I just wanted to get your thoughts on it. Like, I think the most amazing thing that directors can do is not just casting good actors in parts, but casting actors and then giving them opportunities to do things that other people have not seen them do,
Yeah.
that they're suddenly capable of, maybe
Yeah.
even surprising the performers themselves. And I keep coming back to Porsha. I don't know if she was probably confident, but no one who saw the first season of the show knew Angela would go in that direction.
Right.
And I don't know if anyone knew Porsha was going to pull that stuff off, and she was the MVP of the season to me. It was an amazing
She was
performance.
amazing. Yeah.
When did you know that was possible? How far did you feel comfortable pushing her, and how quickly did you realize, oh, she can do this?
Well, at the end of the first season, when we did that shoe store scene,
Yes.
and I was like, and she did that scene. And I still watch that scene. It's like a fascinating scene, purely from an actor's point of view, because I'm watching her and I cannot read. I don't think I intended for her to be that ambiguous about it, but I could not read whether she liked this or she felt shame of, man, I really just was condescending to this poor shoe salesman. And no, I got to remember who I am. I'm the nice. And she was just right in the middle. I mean, she really was. She wasn't one way or the other, because she could have played it like a total, like, you know, go get my Pradas and, you know, get out of here, be gone with you. But she didn't. She really didn't do it either way. And that really informed the second season, because that was the whole Jackie Brown trigger for me. That was like, oh, because that movie is genius in hiding the motivation. Well, I guess we cleared that up. The motivation was clear, but who she was going to play to get to that, I mean, it was genius in hiding that. And it was such a great storytelling choice that when I knew that Porsha was like, wow, she's in the zone for that,
Yeah.
I was going to exploit the hell out of that.
What do you derive the most pleasure from in making the show after doing it for 2 years? Is it things like, obviously Rami winning the Emmy the other night was amazing. The adulation and excitement coming off the first season to the second season must have been a lot of fun. But I wonder, having spoken to you and watching the show, do you collect those moments? Because as a filmmaker, you're always chasing the next one. So you look back on the shoes, and you nailed the shoe scene. You think about the karaoke moment. You're like, I got that moment, or I got that incredible shot.
Right.
Does it become a collection of those shots and moments to you, or is it more cumulative?
I think it's more cumulative because this isn't. I don't think about it in seasons. I think about it in the two pieces of the end game where we're exactly.
Yeah.
And then we're not even done, finishing writing the novel or whatever, finishing the movie or whatever. And it's almost like you're getting all this like feedback of like, oh, that was cool, well that wasn't, but I'm not done yet. Let me finish. So in a weird way, I try not to get distracted by it.
It's a fascinating divide between the creation and the perception of it. From like the way we're experiencing it, the way people are processing television, so the way it must be like, I have like a 3, 4, 5 season arc that I'm working on. We're not even halfway through yet.
Right. Well, but also I don't know if a lot of TV is made that way. I think they do think about it as enclosed.
I'm sure it's week to week
stories.
for a lot of people. Yeah.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
So before we let you go, I feel like you've been so generous with your time to us. What would you like to talk about? Do you want to take us to task for anything particular? Anything else we got wrong?
Yeah, you like Designated Survivor? Anything go?
You want to talk
I
about?
haven't watched Designated Survivor. Is it good? You guys both watched it. I haven't listened to the Jean Favreau thing. I haven't listened to that.
Wow. Walk off the set right now. We watched all of your shows.
I know, seriously. I watched
We watched
Mr. Robot
every
last
episode.
night.
You just skipping around?
Wait. I don't want to take you to task on anything, but I do want to know, like, because you guys get all the goodies, and I haven't found
Tons.
We get a lot
so
of
I've
goodies.
got Atlanta, right?
Yeah.
I've got Better Things. I like Better Things.
Okay.
But where are the dramas?
So did you like Night Of? Did you watch Night Of?
I love Night Of.
Night Of.
I did disagree with
We're
you a
going to
lot
talk
on
about
Night
this
Ofs.
next week, but I'm pretty obsessed with Gomorrah right now.
Is that good?
It is the darkest thing I've ever seen on television, I think.
And it's great.
I haven't watched it yet.
Yeah. I mean,
That's my homework.
it is, I would describe it almost as rewarding homework.
Okay. All right. I'll add that to the list.
I'm not like ever like, boy, I'm really glad I'm a human being after watching
but
it.
Easy doesn't sound like a drama to me, right?
No, it's like
it's
it's short,
it's
half-hour
like half-hour.
installations, and I'm excited about that.
But
comedy's where it's at right now.
I
Half-hour's
know
where it's at.
this is what's sad about drama is that no, I mean, like, I love the comedies, but I really wish I want there to be like that drama I can sink my teeth into.
I think, but it's cyclical. I mean, I think that people were getting frustrated with what drama's being samey, and now all the creative energy is going to comedies, and now
Let me ask you a
maybe it'll
question
swing
because
back.
I know you didn't. Horace and Pete.
Yeah, I couldn't get through it.
I mean,
First of all, I should say to our listeners
This,
that
by
when,
the way, listeners, an amazing show. Probably my favorite drama of the year. I gotta be honest with you.
When you
But by the way,
arrived
but
on
that
set
was-
for Hacking Robot episode 1,
Yeah.
you told me that the only thing you wanted to talk about
Horace and Pete.
on USA's air after your own premiere was Horace and Pete.
I mean, Horace and Pete was that experimental, original, inventive.
For me, it
week-to-week.
became, and maybe this is also a factor of how I have to watch TV or the amount that I was having to watch. It was something that, and remains something that I admired, but didn't take enough pleasure out of to continue once my professional obligations to it were over, which is a terrible way to think about this.
Right.
But I would love to see the Laurie Metcalf monologue. I bet
So
it's
you didn't
amazing.
even get that far.
I made it. That's 3. I made it 2.
I think you should watch it. I think it's a great show. I think it's so underrated. I was a little bummed they didn't get as much love as some other shows. And I hope he does another season. But I honestly think Louis is, to me, that's. I mean, if there's any singular vision on TV, film, wherever, it's Louis C.K. He's brilliant, off the charts for me.
Well, he does every part of it.
I mean, he does, yeah.
He writes
and
and
honestly,
directs
and there's something, because sometimes it doesn't work for me. Like I'll watch it, whatever, and it doesn't work.
But that feeling you're talking about, where you don't know what you're going to get.
I find it more forgiving in the half-hour format. Like there are episodes of Louis that I dislike, and there are episodes of Louis that I think are some of the best things I've ever seen on TV. And for some reason, I roll with it because they're 30 minutes long.
But aren't they? Well, but even Horace and Pete, some of the episodes are like, okay, I'm not sure. I don't know what I got. And it was 40 minutes long or whatever. But it's so worth It's so worth those moments to get the rewards.
It's an
of those
indictment of my
great-
impatience because I'm sitting here saying, everyone that I respect liked it. I agree that it is probably good, and yet I have not
Right.
done this. This is also could be the
Please
long.
revisit it.
It could be the long tail of me not having to watch everything anymore because I'm not doing that anymore. So now I'm just like, I don't have to watch
Just airplane movies.
Just airplane movies
Yeah.
all the time. Apparently, movies are pretty good sometimes. I didn't know that.
Have you seen a movie you like recently?
I think what's been out recently.
Don't look at me. I haven't been on a plane in 6 weeks.
I saw Sully.
Okay.
I liked Sully.
Okay.
It's fun. It's fine. Did you guys watch Sully?
It wasn't.
I'll watch it in a year.
Yeah, I did.
But no, actually, I will never
Like
watch that on
Tom
an airplane.
I like
It's the
Sully.
worst ever airplane
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah, I also liked that was. I mean, weirdly.
You guys saw Snowden. I haven't seen
I saw
Snowden.
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 Yeah.
You have not?
Yeah, I saw it.
And it was.
I did not like it.
Well, I mean, it's everything I knock about hacking, or movies about hacking.
I thought you meant Hacking Robot.
No, I mean, like.
You wanna criticize
No, you were amazing. And is that what this is all about?
Yes.
This
And
is all leading up.
will you guys do a podcast
did a
about
great
me?
job.
Thanks,
You did
guys.
an amazing job.
Affirmation. No, we'll let you go after this, but it is remarkable that considering the amount of work that you've had and like your life was just divided into like these 10-minute increments of
Right.
you were editing every episode till
Yeah,
you
yeah.
finished like 2 weeks ago basically,
Yeah.
right before the finale, and you're about to go back into it. You were still finding time to consume and enjoy culture.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it because I think it teaches me. You know, this whole thing. It's like, it's what I said earlier about not squandering this opportunity. Because I know that whenever I turn on a TV show, I want whoever's behind that, whatever or project that they're putting on, to fucking blow my mind. Oh, you know what's great? Fleabag. Fucking
Completely agree.
Fucking great. And they take chances and they take risks. And sure, you might get shit on by critics.
Not this one.
But
I love that show.
But you still do them, and it's all worth it because you get these amazing inventive.
And a great way to tease that Phoebe's on the podcast next Wednesday.
Oh, is she?
She was here yesterday, yeah.
She's amazing.
Watch Fleabag on
Oh
Amazon.
my God!
I
I've
have
only
a-
seen like 3 episodes, but
I
it's
have
amazing.
a last question that I don't know if you're going to be able to
Yeah.
answer. So, Empire Strikes Back, Jackie Brown. I know you talked about Usual Suspects, all films that kind of helped shape the second season.
Yeah.
Give me some homework for the third.
For the third.
Because everyone has to take you to your next interview standing up now. They're,
You know,
they're
but
biting their nails.
I can't say, and I'll be honest with you. Here's the reason why. Because it kind of comes to me in hindsight.
Okay.
Like
It would
I
be
don't, I
so
don't
dope
go
if
in-
you were like Blues Brothers.
Yes, stripes. Can we just tell people that? Like,
Yeah, definitely. It's Stripes.
Worst case
Season
scenario,
3, Stripes.
people watch Fleabag and Stripes and Horace and Pete, and then you get to make
There
season
you
3.
go.
All right, Sam,
Awesome.
you have been a good friend to the pod. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming by, man.
This was great. I mean, guys, I'm a fanboy. I don't know if you know. I love this pod.
The third chair.
This is good podcast that we did today.
This was good.
I feel like this was good podding. Third
this
chair
is-
is always open to
Tate
you. I know
just
you have
said
a lot
it
of
was a
free
good
time.
podcast.
This is me.
Yeah.
That's Sam's chair.
But is Phoebe gonna be?
No, that happened already. That happened yesterday.
Oh, okay, great.
don't worry about it.
You guys. Yeah, there's a whole
There's this
time
thing you can do in
shifting,
post-production.
reality bending.
Let me tell you about
thing.
This podcast has no true north.
All right, this has been an amazing experience. Sam Esmail on the watch. Congratulations on season 2.
Thanks
you
for joining
guys.
us, man.
Thank you guys.